Hello, Katarina. And yeah, good morning from here. I really hope that I don't know how active the pre-Christmas season is in Estonia. I'm guessing it is quite lively and fun. Sorry, I am just drinking from a sheep. God, no, that sounds horrible. No, I have just woken up and I decided, instead of doing nothing for 3 or 4 hours and then whinging because I hadn't achieved anything, to get on with something productive and relatively useful. Unfortunately, I am, as well as the sheep, I am living in a pigsty of mess, and I have misplaced. I have misplaced Richard III, and we were reading other things, weren't we? I can't remember what it was. Oh, Carl Sagan, that's right. I'm sure Carl Sagan must be here somewhere. Oh, I can't see it. I'm sorry. You did not watch this in order to see somebody slightly spaced out yawning at you. Not yawning at you. Of course I'm not. Alright, John. Jesus. So until something more interesting turns up, I'm going to give you... I wanted to do this over a long time, but give you a little dose of this. And I don't know anything about the writer. It just was something I bought a while ago as an just to experience the northern lands. And seeing as you are in the northern lands, I will share her experiences with you. Some of them anyway. Her chapter notes, the names of her chapters are wonderfully evocative. Another world, purity, fire, nostalgia, yikes, frightening, and silence. Wow. So I'm going to give you a bit of silence, because silence is rather nice. I like silence. Also a very Bergman-esque term, isn't it? Right. When I was a teenager, my family spent holidays in the Lake District, travelling there each summer for 2 weeks in a stone cottage near Windermere. I pretended to hate it, sinking with feigned boredom into the car, complaining about the length of the journey. Secretly, I was delighted. I swam in Lake Coniston, walked through the Grisdale forest, and boated on Lake Windermere. I watched the reflections of trees glistening on the clear water of the lakes. I splashed into streams, swam against the cold current, drinking the water when it swilled against my mouth. Clear, cold water from the mountains. I camped in the garden of whatever small stone cottage we were renting that year, to listen to the sounds of the night, stillness and the drum of the rain on the roof of the tent. I would wake my brother early, and we would run across a field towards Windermere, to watch the wash from the speedboats slapping against the sand, to stand on the beaches staring out at the cloudy skies of summer. As we returned each year to the lakes, the landscape came to act as an aide-memoire, each mountain and lake conjuring memories of former years. I wondered what would happen in a landscape stripped of personal associations. I was an irreligious child, finding it impossible to believe in any force beyond the human. But I longed for some sort of intense experience, some epiphanic moment. For purely touristic reasons, I wanted to be struck by a sudden sense of a vast, transcendent force, something overwhelming. I wanted to understand the sensation that seemed to have gripped most of the writers I enjoyed at the time. Wordsworth, Coleridge, Blake, and Clare. Finding nothing of the sort in churches or treatises, I wondered about pure pantheism, the rapturous contemplation of the creative spirit in nature, the spirit in the stones, divinity revealed in the breathing of the trees, and so on. I wondered what would happen if I stood alone in empty space, looking at the vastness of the rocks. I remembered the fear instilled in me as a child by the shaking of trees in the evening winds. As I stood ringing on the door of my parents' house, having been dropped off by a friend's parent in a car, I would glance along the street towards these forms, bowing and nodding in the wind, their branches seeming to reach towards me. Then the light of the doorway would extend towards me. I would be scooped into the warmth of the house, and the fear would fade. Fairy tales were played out in rustic places, dark forests, country villages, and in Tolkien's Lord of the Rings, which I loved as a child, was a mournful pastoral lament creating an idealized Europe of green meadows and rushing mountain rivers, where small hobbits lived in holes in the ground, and tree herders spoke, and the enemy came as a technocrat, damming rivers and waging wars. There were dozens of gentle idylls in children's books. The swallows and amazons camping in the dales, their imaginations as rich as the view, naming the rocks after legendary mountains, finding treasure islands and pirates. Narnia was the unchanging forest, the Arcadia in the cupboard, or in the attic of the city house. There were darker Arcadias, the warped pastorals of the Susan Cooper books, which had been my favourites for a time, with their Arthurian world where pagan festivals bred surreal dreams. In one of the most febrile of the books, a wicker figure thrown into the sea appears in a vision to one of the children. In these books, the fictional worlds were beyond the grasp of adults, except the occasional enlightened guardian who understood the secret and turned out anyway to be a reincarnation of Merlin. They were gently didactic, adult written, trying to explain to children that they might lose the ability to imagine themselves far away from reality, or they would no longer have a place to come to. Later, they would be forced to distinguish between the actual and the created. It would be a necessary part of their commitment to the world, distinguishing the plausible and the rational from the insane, the eccentric and the unfortunate. The rural Arcadias represented a state of innocence, a time when the individual could live free from the fetters of society, innocent of the realities of adulthood. The realm of experience, the world of adults, where rules were imposed on the imagination, was intertwined symbolically with the city. It was like the world of William Blake in Songs of Innocence and Experience, which I read as a teenager. Poems that pretended to be songs for children, but which spelt out the division between Arcadia and society in rustic images. Blake saw the country-city division less as a question of physical location and more as high symbolism, a supreme expression of the battle of the human spirit against the restrictions of society. For Blake, the countryside was less the place for a pleasing picnic and more a symbol of freedom from the fetters of convention, from the stultifying effects of orthodoxy, represented by the, quote, mind-forged manacles of the city. The songs of innocence and experience divided the life of the spirit into states of freedom from social restrictions, states of innocence, and states of subjection, states of experience. London was where the individual was enslaved, bound with briars. Emptiness and silence were freedom, because they were devoid of the clamour of other voices, telling you how to behave, what not to do, or what to be. Well, I'm very glad I'm going to put a bookmark there because I'm very glad that I opened that up after several years. Right, I'm woozy tired and I will need gallons of coffee. I hope you're alright today. See you around, Katarina. Bye-bye.